Yeah, so I wanted to kind of take you guys through a, all things considered, sort of quick tour, some mental states that are where things seem very simple to more complicated, and that uh, this is what the mind does. It sort of scales on sort of different levels of abstraction. Ultimately, I think ranging from zero to much more complex, and then eventually we sort of hit our capacity of consideration, and we'll tap out and then project to infinity. So another thing to look out for. And yeah, it's just something that the mind does that I really wanted to point out. And then once you become sort of more lucid of that, you can notice different moments when things are seeming like there's a lot going on, or things are seeming very simple, different times, and there's not it's not like there's any one right level of abstraction of which to, like, we got to stay at, or this is the true level or something like that. Yes, well, I've kind of come to see, it's not like I have the best understanding of these things, but see infinity as this like placeholder that we will use to kind of fill in when we encounter something maybe beyond our capacity, that we've now lost detail, or we lacking the sensory clarity. And so it's like, oh, infinite that, whatever, the thing I can't really perceive well. So let's just, you know, plug in infinity there. And so I think it's something, it's sort of, I talk to lots of people about their exploration of their mind, their meditative journeys, and yeah, it's maybe like a pattern. I obviously relates to me as well when I hear the word that someone going, infinite consciousness, infinite whatever, you know, um, that it's like revealing of like, okay, there's an area that I would highly recommend look into that infinity and see if you can't find more detail actually and get more sensory clarity on that thing. And then a lot of things that yeah, we initially want to say are infinite, and then it's like, well, actually not quite infinite. Yeah, so then I do sort of see this process of, it's like, how can we enlarge our capacity to be able to handle more complexity, and like hold more things in mind, and sort of have a richer experience and perceive more detail. Eventually we always sort of find our limits. But yeah, then with the sort of the moment of the unknown and the sort of infinite projection can be a moving line in that way. I mean, so I think there is that like risk of overwhelm, and maybe this is where actually you want to pull back, go, actually it's sort of over my head at the moment, or too much. Let's take a step back and enter a more simpler way of seeing. And so it's nice if you have access on hand, like I'm trying to point out in this meditation. Okay, just come back to the five senses, or just come back to, like, there's just one experience, or there's just kind of breathing in and out, two things going on, simplify, re-regulate, and then from a more stable condition, see if you can sort of tiptoe back into that place. And also, I think um, try to take things sort of one at a time. Sort of entering a new area of complexity is like, hey, I'm just gonna like poke my head in and see if I can pull out a little bit more information, and then I got to back out again. Um, and and giving yourself time. So really, like, you don't have to figure everything out like all at once within one afternoon or something like that. And so, working on longer time scales. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think there is this like embodied cognition effect where it's certainly like, as you'll like even, contort the body and find stuff and hold like sort of memories in a particular, place. And yeah, like we sort of pull all these facial expressions when we're trying to keep more in mind. Uh, oh yeah, yeah. So I mean, yeah, definitely like look out for that stuff. So when you're like lost in complex thinking about some kind, tether it back to the body. Yeah, find like where you're holding patterns of sensation in the body. Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, I absolutely think there's a correlation there. And so that's what, yeah, you find like when you smooth all that out, loosen all that out stuff out, you may, well, there's funny ways in which you may actually, then, you know, complex thinking drops down a lot of levels or simplifies. But there's also ways in which you might find you from like a more relaxed overall body system, you can uh, now like have a wider girth of consideration in some ways because you're not like your thinking isn't impinged by some sensations that would otherwise block your capacity to um like not emotionally react to a counter idea that someone is now dropping into the conversation. It's like you can take it more like, oh, just sort of integrate it in, assume, okay, cool, now we're factoring that in. Okay, I'm going to factor that in. You just factor more and more in, and these kind of things. Yeah. Well, the thinking is part of the experience as well. I think something I like to try to encourage here as well. But sort of the integrating sort of thinking of the intellect in with the rest of the senses and experience. But yeah, no, it's really cool what you're describing when you're getting more into detail with the senses. It kind of like maxed out your capacity, so there was like no more room or like no more bandwidth to then having the thinking going on at the same time.
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
that's pretty much it. Yes, yeah.
yeah. Reminds me of some exercises in TMI, the book The Mind Illuminated, where Chuladasa is kind of effectively trying to do something similar, where he's like, it might be something simple just with paying attention to the breath, but he wants you to pay attention to the breath and so many other components and your peripheral awareness that when you're trying to track all of that going on, thinking can fall out as well because it's just like there's no more room for thinking. Like I've got enough I'm trying to pay attention to. Um, yeah, yeah, it's a method. Oh, cool, thanks for sharing. Yeah. Oh. I think it just keeps popping up as a pattern, as something I notice where people are straddling these strata and not like they're just not aware that they're doing it, and um or they get stuck at a particular level of abstraction, or there's like there's an over emphasis of a particular level of abstraction, like the oneness thing or something. Like we're like everything's one, and it's like real over focus on oneness or non-duality, or and it's just like that is a way of seeing, of which there's many ways of seeing, and just notice the pattern of the mind cycling, you know, to simpler, more complex ways of understanding reality, and see the bigger picture in that way. It's not just like don't keep forcing down to one particular level like that. Yeah, yeah. So I think that's something I just really want to point out. Just like notice this as a very natural function that is what the mind does. It's part of your experience. It will oscillate. It will change. And we're not trying to like, yeah. And rather than like, oh, you just got to have this insight of way of perceiving, of recognize, oh, it's all non-dual or whatever. Have access to the lower levels of abstraction, and really that is quite a special thing because many people before they're on meditative path, like it is a very novel way of seeing, to recognize that, oh, it's all one, maybe, like to get to one, that level. And so, okay, cool. um and then there is a zero, like, which would be cessation, which would really be cessation, which is a very special thing. Once you get zero, that like helps you really recognize the emptiness and the lack of like fundamentality of any of these levels of abstraction. But then also, like as a more mature development, I think we do want to be able to contend with more and more complexity in the world. And so that's like, yeah, this other kind of fail point of spirituality in a way of like, oh, you never like don't think about politics and stuff like that. It's too complex. It's not really what things are. It's all non-dual. Just keep kind of trying to shoot your mind down to simpler levels. It's like, no, can you do the range? Can you have the agility, the flexibility? Because your mind is doing it anyway. So now be aware of that. Okay, that was the idea. And yeah, the importance of integration with this. And so yeah, it can be like really confusing, that juxtaposition where like, oh, when I find myself alone, my mind is sort of conceiving of things like this, but then in social environment with the pressure and there's expectation of actually I do have to handle more going on, and then the thought like, well, which one is the right one, and like, is it like I've just got to carry one over into the other one all the time, or dominate, or um yeah, so then this really speaks to the integration angle, and I think letting people know you're gonna cycle, you're gonna oscillate, and the goal is not just stay at one of these levels all the time. The oneness is another simple um view or state, or like or you can have like saying like sort of parallel considerations at a time where you're sort of walking around the world and there's lots going on, but you have this kind of like undergirding, overarching, whichever way, sense of, oh, it's all one or something like that. So there is a like um an insight which should be like a persisting sense, and then a state of mind which is a more sort of temporary sort of peak experience of everything's one. All right,
Right.
and people sort of unlock that at a time, and you can also have simple states of mind that are not. It's not that everything's one. It's just there's just few things going on. It's not that everything's one, but it's just still a simple state of mind. I'm just trying to point out that yeah, these things happen. All these things happen. The mind goes through this. You likely access these things as you're meditating, and not to not to get stuck there. Just notice when they're happening, while they're happening, and notice that it will change as well. And then you go into states and
Right.
times where there's more complexity going on, and actually look for the ability to nimbly move between these sort of different states and consider. I do keep coming back to the senses. I just think the five senses in particular are just like are essential ingredients of all experiences, no matter how banal or exotic or weird or whatever experience we have. There's going to be sight, sound, sensations, and you might not have the discernment at the time to recognize they are comprised of sight, sounds, and sensations, but that's what they're made of. So it's a really nice level. I liked to sort of began the meditation at that level, ended it at that level. Like if you're ever confused in life or what's going on, you can return with guarantee, with certainty, that there you will find sight, sounds, and sensations. And so it's a nice like level. It's a nice like really nice level to return to, sort of finding your core ingredients in life. Um, but we're not going to always work at that level, and at different times you might like yeah we're not thinking that this is just sight, sounds, and sensations, but we're getting into the weeds and the details. Yeah, yeah, good. Well, actually, this raises a couple of good points. There's a kind of irony about oneness, is that actually, if once we get more sensory clarity, I think we look at this thing, is that phenomena codependently arise. So you can't actually have any one thing by itself. there has to be the suggestion of something other to contextualize that one thing. So if you're like apprehending there's one consciousness or something like that, there is this sort of tacit, it's co-dependently arising with a sense of something other than that. But that other thing might not be, in view, and you don't have the metacognition to speak about it, and so it's overlooked, and so you're just focused on the sense of oneness. But to detect oneness, it has to actually be contrasted with not oneness as well at the same time. So that's kind of the irony, is that there isn't really ever a one. There's a seeming sort of oneness, but it's like once anything starts emerging in experience, you've actually already got two in a way. It's just like one of those things might be like even less well defined. And then another point, how we can make sense of our experience and describe our experiences relative to what we have already referenced. And so we see this process of like, I think about this with when people talk about having experiences where they'll say, oh, there was no ego or no suffering or something like that. And they to make these like absolutist extreme claims. And then they have another experience which gives them a new reference range to then compare the first experience and be able to now judge like, well, actually, in comparison, there was actually more selfing and suffering happening in that first experience than now I've experienced a bit more, less of, in that direction. Yes. Yeah, exactly. Um, so then I think also something I noticed and look out for is, well, just the learning curve, this ability of being able to describe like the micro phenomenology of our experiences in more detail as we get more sensory clarity, as we have more experiences. It takes time, and then it's seeing like as we start off, we'll use like looser terms and like just like broader projections. I'm thinking, so Brian Johnson, right? Just um, smoked 5-MeO DMT, the longevity guy, and good for him. and you listen to his report of the experience, and it's like obviously he had an amazing, just majestic experience. There's quite sort of broad language, right? I'm not faulting him at all, and these states are very, very difficult to explain. And part of the difficulty with 5-MeO in particular is it doesn't want to be explained. It like reduces your discernment faculty. So it's very hard to like report the microphenomenology when you smoke it. Like in particular, it really cuts out your discernment. Um, so okay, that's like another way we can notice where, okay, maybe he's talking in sort of kind of simplistic terms, and like that's sort of where the mind is operating. But could you, right? And this would be like, I think, a real skillful thing to be able to enter into those states and retain higher levels of complexity. So you like be able to like get into more details and talk about more details, right? It's so easy in those states, just like infinite being and consciousness, right? Yeah, cool. And so I guess like I'm also describing a kind of a measure of dare I say like progress, or just like an angle we can move along in our conscious development here, if you value that, if you cared. I think I see value in this ability to be able to hold more complexity, uh, and be okay with like the higher levels of complexity without it like kerfuddling us. Um, I guess because reality is complex, and then there's sort of like greater discernment. You can do like sort of broader pattern matching, I think, relate to more aspects of experience, integrate more if you can hold more in mind. And yeah, there's just this kind of like sanity factor, I find. Having that sort of that lucidity of recognizing it, what sort of strata of abstraction I'm operating at a given time, and then um, um, like more easily earlier detecting my limits. I guess like finding like, oh, I'm moving into like it's I'm maybe I get into a new area where people are talking at a level that goes over my head and I can't handle all the new terms and stuff like this. And instead of like fighting it, I recognize like, okay, we need to like dip out of this conversation, pull back because it's like overwhelming me, and just that lucidity of recognizing, okay, that's what's going on, cool, and then I'll like recalibrate and then digest and then go back in, as opposed to before, if I didn't see that this is what's happening in the mind, I might have like been more tempted to push myself harder and like hitting my head against the wall, like, no, I need to understand, and I've got to connect the dots, and I got to, um, yeah. And there's something I call the like the fine lines of the mind, and there's like lucidity, equanimity, peacefulness, and sanity or sobriety, either or. That these are very, very subtle like features of mind that can be overlooked, but actually we like deeply like want these things. Like when you're in a state of mind where you don't feel sane or you're losing your sanity, it's a very, very scary thing. And so like being able to like detect, okay, cool, within sane understanding, and being able to then like appreciate that. And this has like been a subtle way of finding more appreciation, gratitude, which I think is very like cornerstones of well-being. Okay, people. Yeah, thank you all very much for coming. I hope this was helpful, and yeah, to be continued.